You feel the earth shake. Smoke and fire billow from buildings all around you. A piercing roar splits the sky. And then you see him, the king of the monsters, Godzilla. Godlike in his wrath, but indifferent in his destruction, he's beautiful and terrible all at once. But no matter how much devastation he brings, how much loss he causes, you'll never be able to take your eyes off him. Writer and artist James Stokoe creates comics that are brought to life on a massive canvas, but are brimming with detail. Chaos reigns, and both characters and readers are consumed by a tide of death and calamity in stories like Alien's Dead Orbit, Orkstein, and Sobek. But there is no better fit for Stokoe's predilection for massive waves of destruction and the small lives caught up in them than Godzilla. Since 1954, Godzilla has captivated audiences through dozens of films, comics, books, and more. At first an enormous metaphor for nuclear fears and fallout in Japan, and eventually the embodiment of national pride and strength, Godzilla has taken on many different meanings over the years. But no matter what he means, Godzilla has always brought seismic destruction with him, sparking both awe and horror in the hearts of those who adore him. Off the big screen, IDW Comics has brought Godzilla to life on the printed page through a variety of standalone comics and interconnected series over the years, with each offering writers and artists the chance to put their stamp on the king of the monsters. Stokoe's Godzilla: The Half-Century War, which was published from 2012 to 2013 as a 5-issue miniseries, is a self-contained epic saga that roughly mirrors the timeline of Godzilla's presence in popular culture. The story tracks Japanese Lieutenant Ota Murakami from 1954 through 2002, witnessing the first appearance of Godzilla and soon becoming obsessed with the kaiju. As the decades pass, more and more monsters arrive on Earth, wreaking worldwide destruction that cannot be undone as simply as the films portray. But despite the chaos around him, Murakami's sole focus is Godzilla. Kill him, control him, understand him, anything. Murakami is in search of some sort of meaning to a life dedicated to futilely stopping or slowing Godzilla, who never once notices him. Studying Stokoe's art and how the half-century war mirrors our own obsessions with Godzilla and other apocalyptic stories can help illuminate why we're transfixed by stories of destruction and the end of the world, like Godzilla. Equally entertaining and horrifying, these stories remain popular as they help us process our great global fears. Choosing to start Half-Century War in 1954, the same year as the debut of Ishiro Honda's original Gojira, locks the reader into a frame of reference for the series to follow. As Godzilla destroys Tokyo and is killed by Dr. Daisuke Serizawa's oxygen destroyer off-panel, he got better, we see how Stokoe will use references to Godzilla's film history to create a larger world filled with Easter eggs for fans. But since Half-Century War is first and foremost the story of Murakami's obsession and his tiny role in a much larger worldwide rampage, these references don't keep non-Godzilla fans from enjoying the story. Likewise, massive swaths of story happen off-screen, with each issue focusing on a pivotal moment in Murakami's life. Regarding these frames of reference, Stokoe said, "I am trying to touch on all the different eras and tones of Godzilla, so there's a bit of that Showa-era goofiness in issue number 3, some of that more clinical science approach of the Heisei period later on. It's not a true, spot-on chronological history of the Godzilla films, but there's definitely a bit of all the series in there. Anguirus as the first kaiju to battle Godzilla, maser cannons used to attack monsters to ill effect, a murderer's row of kaiju that fill the earth. Even multiple versions of Mechagodzilla, with one using Godzilla's tissue inside for the Millennium-era set finale. Stokoe's longtime love of the Godzilla franchise is loud and clear through his details, and that obsessive love is reflected in the character of Murakami. As the series jumps a decade with each issue, Murakami changes from a young soldier awestruck by Godzilla to a jaded old man still obsessed with the kaiju and desperate to have his life's obsession finally notice him. Around him, the anti-Megalosaurus force rises and falls as the war-profiteering technology of a mad scientist brings more and more monsters to Earth. Like the audience huddled in a theater, watching Godzilla destroy everything in sight is what matters to Murakami. The destruction of the world is of little consequence. Godzilla, that's what they called him in the papers. Powerful, terrible, intense, a king of all monsters. How would I find anything that could compare to him again? Ota Murakami's life is totally centered on Godzilla. We see nothing else of the man simply because there is nothing else. I had to figure out what it is exactly that I found so appealing when I first saw Godzilla, then instill that same sense into Ota, Stokoe explained. I ended up writing the series as an unrequited love story, which probably sounds a bit goofy for a Godzilla story, but makes a weird kind of sense for the character. We as audiences love Godzilla because of his seismic, monstrous appeal and the vibrancy of his world. It would seem strange to love such a creature when you could be trampled by him at any given moment. By applying audience love to a character, Murakami becomes a surrogate. The world of half-century war is given life through the ultra-vibrant colors that Stokoe uses in all of his books. Jokingly referred to by the author as gummy bear colors, these unnatural highlights underline the cartoonish nature of his character designs. It's an outlandish mashup of manga-inflected sharp-angled character work, with hyper-detailed destruction in the style of Jeff Darrow and the otherworldly scale of Mobius. Stokoe, with an assist by Heather Breckel, paints this particular world in hues of red. It's bold and omnipresent, but has a direct link to Godzilla himself. Stokoe colors the king of the monsters as radiating radioactive heat, the gradient reds and oranges pulsing from him and coloring the world. It's easy to miss at first because basically every issue of half-century war is mired in destruction that is already underway. But in the brief glimpses of a world untouched by kaiju, Stokoe illustrates a globe of greens and blues. Those earth tones become less and less seen as the series goes on, and the world is slowly consumed by the growing number of kaiju and their annual battles. This growing destruction is further emphasized by having each issue open with a splash page that sets the date and location, accompanied by an aerial shot of where the following story takes place. Godzilla's latest rampage is already in full swing at the start of each issue, so we can see how the world is reshaped by his chaos. Reds, oranges, and purples spread across the maps, illustrating the damage that is changing the globe one stomp at a time. These maps slowly grow larger and larger, starting with the city of Tokyo and eventually growing to the entire planet by the finale. It's a fast and efficient way for Stokoe to give audiences their bearings and depict a larger world outside of the immediate conflict depicted in each issue, illustrating the widespread terror that is typically out of Murakami's point of view. Godzilla himself is depicted in his classic muted dark green with spines that glow when powering up his radioactive breath. That breath explodes across panels in bright white blue, cutting through the smoke and heat in a display of pure power. As for the design of Godzilla himself, he's a seeming blend of a few influences from the more aggressive Heisei period and the more elaborate Millennium period of films. His fuller, meaner eyes from Godzilla 1984, his big elaborate spines from 2002's Godzilla against Mechagodzilla, his stocky but muscular body typical of this later period. But Godzilla isn't just about design, it's about size. How do films create a sense of size that can be understandable to audiences when depicting something as surreal as Godzilla? For much of the character's filmography, this needed to be done through costumes and miniatures, a process equal parts impressive in its tactile nature as it is charming in its silliness. Creating that sense of mythic proportions requires scale, sound, and character. Stokoe incorporates all three within his art. In the earliest appearance of Godzilla, Stokoe uses a multi-panel setup to reveal the monster piece by piece. A noise, a foot, and finally a double-page spread, revealing him in all his glory as Tokyo crumbles. Stokoe's obsessive amount of detail shows plumes of smoke, explosions, and debris in every square inch, no matter how far away they are, sort of like Hergé's Lean Claire jacked up on Red Bull. Godzilla and his fellow kaiju tower above the wreckage, and the amount of minute detail helps contrast their enormity. Tanks and cars swerve through the chaos. Multiple moments and motion blur shown within a single giant image. These moments show just how slow and lumbering, yet unstoppable, these monsters are, just like the films. The onomatopoeia of kaiju destruction is scattered throughout half-century war's art. Their size and incorporation within the image help emphasize just how loud this Armageddon really is. But it's Stokoe's depiction of Godzilla's classic roar that really makes an impact. The artist ran the sound through an oscilloscope and then used the pattern that was created as the physical representation of the roar. He filled in the outline with vague lettering and colored it with a fiery glow. The result is a graffiti-style roar that looks exactly like it should sound, overwhelming everything else on the page. All of these moments are seen from the point of view of Murakami, whose reactions Stokoe often inserts into massive images through small panels or voiceover. Despite being the lead character, Murakami is always shown as insignificant in the larger scope. The decades show their wear and tear as the young, brazen man becomes the weary elder. But no matter what he does, Murakami will never truly understand Godzilla. I wondered if I could ever break it off. I'd poured most of my life into this game, and there wasn't anything else for me to go off to. No family, no friends outside the AMF. I'd spent so long trying to solve the Godzilla problem that I couldn't even begin to imagine a life without it. It tends to be more unsettling when the monster is unknowable, said Stokoe, and having an utterly human character try and unravel them and lose their minds in the process is always rewarding to watch. Murakami himself is finally, if briefly, elevated to the same level as Godzilla when he takes control of Mechagodzilla, unleashing hell alongside his obsession on the deadly King Ghidorah and Gigan. It's Murakami's chance to finally make Godzilla notice him. This massive, earth-shattering climax brings Murakami's story to a close, while showing that the legend of Godzilla never truly dies. Beyond those who brought him to life, those who have continued his story, and those who watch his every move, Godzilla lives on. Stokoe's Half-Century War is a small but vibrant encapsulation of that legend's timeless appeal, forever connecting a creator's love to his subject through a tragic surrogate. And so long as humanity is compelled to cheer on its titanic destruction and salvation, Godzilla will remain a part of our culture's undying obsession.